Hey guys, Chris here. Tonight I am out in the Nevada desert and we're going to be putting the day pack on and hiking up to one of these ridges over here. And I got a couple stories. They're both really odd stories about Bigfoot and how elusive he can be, or she, and how scary that can be as well. That's next. I think we're going to go up that way. All right, really nice view from up here. Check this out. All right, I got a cozy little spot here, and I picked this up just this last week. Got a new table from Sportsman's Warehouse right there. This tiny little table, but it works great. Look at that. And then I can put my lantern on that and my beer. And tonight's beer is brewed in Oregon since 1983, Rogue Batsquatch Hazy IPA. Look at that. It's got a Batsquatch. Little frightening. I did this one, this beer, probably about a year ago or something. But it says on the can here, Batsquatch. Rumor has it that Batsquatch lives deep within the woods of Mt St Helens. This tale's details are hazy, making the truth a juicy mystery. And that is perfect because we are going to talk about Mt St Helens tonight. After we get this beer going. There we go. But that is a 6.7 ABV on that. Here's what it looks like. Oh, almost citrusy. It's almost kind of opaque, light opaque. Let me go right from the can here. Boy, that goes down really smooth. A slight bitter finish to it. Definitely fruity, but not overpowering with the citrus. And malt, tropical, citrus, pine, and a little bitter. There you go. That's good. I like that. Cheers. Okay, so our story takes place in Washington State, and near Mt St Helens. And this is where Alan lived, and he was 19 years old at the time. This was 1999. And he and his two brothers, Greg and his younger brother Brady, wanted to go to Mt St Helens for the day and hunt for Bigfoot, to look for Bigfoot and see what they could find. Now, Mt St Helens erupted in May 18th, 1980, and it was the most destructive volcano in U.S. history. 229 square miles were devastated. 200 homes were gone. 185 miles of highway were just blown away, and 57 people died in that massive eruption. And I remember seeing it on the news in 1980 when I was in high school. And it was also on the cover of National Geographic, seeing this volcano just blowing out the side. And so this is where Alan and his two brothers wanted to go for the day. And this was October 20th, 1999. Now, they had an uncle named Uncle Jim. He was getting older. I don't know how old he was. But in the 60s, Uncle Jim had found a Bigfoot print somewhere in Washington. And he always talked about it. He was always kind of proud that he saw this. And he actually had a photo of it. And they thought, hey, let's have Uncle Jim come with us. He doesn't walk very well. He can't hike. But you know what? Maybe we could get him in the car. And then we'll hit the roads that go around Mt St Helens. And there's all these overlooks and viewpoints. And they could just get out and look around and get the spotting scope, the camera, and just look and listen and just see what they could find. But they thought it'd be really fun because they were really all into Bigfoot. So Uncle Jim came over to the house, met the boys, and they loaded up in the car. Uncle Jim in the back, and Brady was in the back, Greg, Alan up front. And they drove to Randall, Washington, and from there they continued on up on this road all the way to the top to the Spirit Lake overlook. And they thought this would be great. We could see a lot. And they got up there, and it was really foggy, rainy, sleeting, and there was this big, huge fog bank that they were in. So the view was completely obstructed. So they got back in the car, drove down the mountain, and went to the Cascade View overlook, pulled it into the parking lot, and the view opened up, but it was still rainy, sleety, and there was like an inch of slush in the parking lot. And then there was a Forest Service road that went up, and there was a gate across it. So Alan stops the car in this parking lot, gets out, and he's starting to mount his camera on this tripod. His brother Greg gets out, starts scanning the meadow down below in the forest and getting the view. His Uncle Jim was in the back of the car with the spotting scope, and he started looking around. And then his youngest brother Brady got out, and he walks over to the edge of this drop off from this viewpoint, and he yells out with all he's worth, "Hello!" Right then, Alan says, "Shut up. Don't do that again." And he goes, okay. And then, right then, they could hear from inside the car, Uncle Jim yells out, "Hey, that scream triggered something. There's something moving down below." And Uncle Jim saw this large, upright, black figure about 400 yards away in this meadow quickly start moving and running this way, and then it went around this hill and disappeared. And he had the spotting scope, so he saw it very clearly from 400 yards away. And he said he was pretty scared. He didn't like what he had seen, and he was really spooked by this. But he said, if you guys want to go up this gated road and go up, maybe you could get over this hill here and then look back down. Maybe you'll see this creature again, because he was moving that way. And so they did. They went past the gate, all three of them, Brady, Alan, and Greg, and said, okay, we'll be back as soon as we can. And they went up this dirt road and went over this hill, and it took them about 25 minutes, about 10, 12 minutes in and 7 or 8 minutes looking around, and then coming back. It was about 25 minutes. They got back to the car, came down this hill into the parking lot, back to Uncle Jim, who was sitting in the car the whole time. And he said, you guys, the second you crested that hill and got on the other side, that thing that I saw down in the meadow instantly came out and started walking back through the meadow the opposite direction you guys were going. And he said he could see how huge it was, and it was walking past this smaller black stump. Just a stump. And as he walked past it, this stump moved and started following this, looked like a Sasquatch. And then they both walked off in the opposite direction of where the three boys were going. It was going like this way, and the boys went that way. And this Uncle Jim said this thing turned, and they both went, both of these shapes headed north into this, I believe it was Bear Valley. So it clearly looked like this Bigfoot kind of led the boys in one direction. They went in that direction, and as soon as they were out of sight, they were out higher up, it turned around and came back to help the young Bigfoot to get him to safety. It lured the boys away, though. Really wild. So they all loaded up in the car, and they drove the half-mile down to the miner's car parking lot. And there they got out. It was still rainy, sleeting, just lightly misting. It was, very wet and damp. And the uncle said, all right, you guys spread out and let's go down the sides of this road here, the Windy River Road. And there was the Clearwater Creek flowing underneath it with the Meta Lake over here. And they were looking for any tracks that would cross the road and then continue on the other side. And so the uncle and Brady are on one side, Greg was on the other side, heading down the road. And then Alan found the Clearwater Creek drainage. It was a gully. And he decided to go into that and follow that down. And he followed it down about 100 yards into the forest. And he stayed on the low side of the creek. Sometimes the creek's higher up. And he came around this bend and he saw this dead tree, just a small dead pine tree. He just remembered it because the top of the tree was orange. It had been dead for, probably since the previous summer, who knows. But he just remembered that tree. And then when he saw the tree, he looked to the left, and on the slope coming out of this creek bed in the mud, he saw this large humanoid footprint. And he clearly saw toes in there, not claws, but toes. And he looked around and he saw an impression of something else that looked like another footprint. It wasn't nearly as clear, but this one was like really clear. And so he went back up this gully to the car to get his plaster kit to make a cast of this thing. And he wanted to consult his brother, who was and had been a student at Washington State University, and he studied under Dr. Grover Krantz. He was a professor of anthropology at Washington State University, and he specialized in physical anthropology and the study of evolution, as well as the study of Bigfoot. He was a cryptozoologist. Really interesting. And this is who Greg studied under. So Alan wanted to get his opinion about what he had found down in the gully, this large footprint. And this Dr. Krantz, from what I know, was ridiculed and made fun of among the university and among his cohorts in his community of professors and scientists or whatever they are. But pretty wild. But he had some experiences, and he talked to enough people to know better than to just make fun of it without some serious research, and that's what he did. So I might do a video about him, or at least know more about him and stuff. But so Alan got Greg to come down this gully along this creek to this footprint that he'd found, and then Greg right away said, yeah, that looks like a big footprint. And so Alan started casting this footprint, put the plaster in it, and then because it was rainy and misty, it needed some time to set up. And so they took some half log shells, like tree trunk bark and just kind of broke in half and placed it over the top to protect it for the night. And they were really satisfied with their day, and that Uncle Jim had seen what he saw and reported twice about this Bigfoot and the young one, and then the footprint that they found to support that. So they all loaded back up in the car and went home. So they went back the next morning to that location, Windy River Road, Matta Lake, and Greg and Alan went down the gully along the creek and retrieved the cast of the footprint. Brought it back to the car and went home. And Alan was really happy he had done that, and he did it exactly when he did it. And it was part of this memory that he had of this experience with his uncle, who had been studying Bigfoot on his own for 30 years since he saw a footprint in the 60s, and then his brother, who studied under this Dr. Grover Krantz, and he had a fascination in Bigfoot and its strong interest, and it was just all part of this experience that they had on Mt St Helens in 1999. And this little brother Brady too was really into it. So that is our story about Mt St Helens. I got one more story, but the temps are dropping pretty quick. My hands are pretty cold. I could wear gloves. I just don't feel like it. It's not like it's -10 or something. It's probably 28 degrees or something. I don't know. But anyways, I'm going to go home, cook a little food, and then we'll do one more story. So. All right, you guys, here's my little house here before I make dinner. But I'm going to make a quick dinner. And, oh, there's a painting I just got last year. Isn't that awesome? That's Yosemite National Park. And I got this one at the thrift store. It's Robert Wood. It's pretty awesome. I got it for like $20. It's worth like $400. And my little kitchen. So anyways, here is what we're having for dinner. Seasoning. Style mild. Tacos. Taco Tuesday. Okay, we are in the cabin now. So I got a lot of stuff on the walls here, a lot of junk. I love my junk. I collect this stuff over the years. It's pretty awesome. So, okay, so this next story takes place in Washington State again, near Mount Rainier. Now, Dave was working in Seattle as a gunsmith in 2002. On November 16th of that year, he went to the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest to go deer hunting. So he was solo deer hunting. He knew his way around the forest. He knew the route. He'd scouted this area out. And he was just outside of Mount Rainier National Park. He knew where he was on the map. And he was on a Forest Service road, walking down this really steep hill. It was windy, light rain, and in the mountains behind him, it was snowing up there, and just kind of this furious cloud cover and snow coming down in the mountains up behind him. He's going down this road. On the left side of this road, the ground is frozen. It's about 8:30 in the morning. And he can see about 300 yards down this slope, on the same side of the road as he is, this dark black shape walking towards him. Apparently unaware of his presence, and he thought, well, because he's on a steep slope, he's not silhouetted by the background or the sky, and maybe he's blending in somewhat as he's heading down towards this thing. He assumes it's a bear, which makes sense. It's large and it's black. And so he takes his rifle with the scope and he points it right at this thing, thinking it's a bear. And he quickly realizes it's walking upright on 2 feet. And it kind of startled him. And his next thought is, this is a man. Oh my gosh, there's a guy walking on this road. It's hunting season, doesn't have a stitch of orange on him, blaze orange. And he's wearing all black, including a stocking cap. And then he had this thought like, oh my gosh, I just took my rifle with the scope and I aimed it right at another person. Very dangerous. The situation had been slightly different. He might have shot something. It was not bear season, he was just really taken back that he had just done this, being a responsible hunter. And this thing continues to walk. It's closing the gap, and he's watching it, and he's coming down this slope, and he realizes it probably doesn't see him very well because of the hill behind him. And then he starts taking these quiet baby steps, as he said, just kind of really slow down. He's still moving, but he's taking these much smaller steps to buy some time because this gap is closing pretty quickly. And he's watching this thing. He's not really sure what he's seeing now. He's thinking maybe this isn't a person, and he's kind of confused. This thing goes another 50 yards, and then it suddenly stops, like frozen, and it's like, looks like it's staring right up at him, so it saw him. And then it crouched down with its legs like this, and just crouched down really low, staring at him, and then it slowly looked to the right, slowly looked to the left, and it was on the same side of the road as he was. You remember there were some ruts there, and he was on the left side of the road. And suddenly, this thing leaped straight up and over, cleared 2/3 of the road, and went 4, maybe 5 feet into the thick brush and disappeared. And he said when he saw it leap, he did see legs like spread out, or like with a deer or something where there's 4 legs leaping. He just saw it was just like leapt like that. And he thought, what the hell was that? And he knew it wasn't a person or a bear at this point. Dave made a mental note of exactly where this thing went in and disappeared into the forest. He went another 150 yards, and then he turned same direction, dropped into the brush and in this gully and worked his way down, and then went up on the other side where it went up, and he sat on some deadfall and listened because he thought this thing's going to be moving either this way or the opposite way, but at least I might be able to hear him or see what this thing was. So he sat in this deadfall listening in the wind and the rain, and he didn't hear or see anything. Waited about 20 minutes. Then he came back to the road and went down to exactly where this thing went into the brush. And he looked for tracks or anything. The ground was frozen solid. Again, it's late November. And he thought if this was a bear or some other animal with the claw marks, it probably would have left some kind of a claw mark as it propelled itself off the road into the brush. And he didn't even see that. And so he was a little confused about what he really saw. And he also said this. I'm just going to read this. And this is from 2002, but he said, my dog, who was in the camper with me while I was on this hunting trip, had been acting awful weird the whole night before. He was antsy all night, and every time I shined the flashlight on him, his ears were perked up and he was staring at the door of the camper. And so Dave said that he didn't realize what he'd seen. He'd packed everything up. He was on his way home, heading back to Seattle. And then on the way home, he realized what he saw, or most likely what he saw. And that was a Bigfoot. Pretty wild. And that is our story from Dave. And that is water, by the way, from Mount Rainier in Washington. So you guys, thank you for watching my little episode here this week, and more to come. The days are getting longer, the days are getting warmer, and I'm getting excited to get out there more. And if you guys like my cooking or the camping and the stories or the whatever else the heck I'm doing out here or in here, let me know, because that's what I want to do. I love all of it, so I'm good with it. So, all right, you guys, thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. And as always, keep hiking.